everyone, and welcome back for another episode of the Endless Bar podcast. I am, as always, your host, Keith Russell. This is, in fact, episode 1 of series 4, so I'm delighted to be back. So on this momentous occasion, I've got a very special guest with me today. We've got another Keith with me today. We have, of course, got Keith Walsh on the episode with me today. So you probably know Keith from hosting the breakfast show on 2FM. After his 5-year stint on that, he decided to take a bit of time off, do a bit of soul searching and find himself. And in that time, he wrote his play called Pure Mental. So, well, very welcome, Keith. Thanks very much for coming on the show. I was just going to say I'll shut up now and introduce you, but you're staying silent anyway, so we're okay.
I'm saying nothing, Keith. I can't believe there's two Keiths. Why hasn't there been a podcast called the Two Keiths podcast yet? You know?
Yeah.
The old joke. Who looks at a baby and decides, I know, I'll call it Keith. Well, we're here to prove that two people did 1 year or 2 years. What year are you born, Keith?
1980.
All right, yeah. We're about the same age,
yeah. It was a very popular. It was a very popular name in the 80s. There was a whole two people called Keith.
Funnily enough, before I know you'll get to it, but there's another Keith mentioned in my play. Actually, a lad I went to school with, but only named his first name. I didn't identify him.
Yeah. So there's three of us. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I tell you. Well, actually, it's funny. The year when I was in primary school in Athlone, where I grew up, there was 3 Keiths in my class.
Yeah, there was 3 in mine as well. Actually.
Yeah. That was the height of the Keith craze. Everyone was going Keith mad.
Yeah, do you know what? As you say about the podcast, there probably is a podcast called it, because everyone seems to have a podcast these days. So there probably is one called the 2 Keiths or the 3 Keiths or whatever it is. I'm sure if we look, we'll probably find one.
Yeah, there should be. If there's not, there should be.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you never know. When this is over, we might have a chat and we'll do it ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Right, so come here. Look, so you obviously doing a breakfast show, and everyone knows you from that. And that finished up, and you had time on your hands. And I suppose the time on your hands probably didn't go to plan as you thought it might. And maybe you kind of had, well, I know, look, the reason why I'm saying it like that is because I know when I have time on my hands, my mind starts to kind of spiral and the negative thoughts come into my mind. Is that what happened to you?
Well, not really, because I know myself well enough. Like, I was working. So the last time something like this happened to me, I was working for iRadio, and one day iRadio said, we're slashing our costs in half, we're slashing our staff in half, we're amalgamating the 2 radio stations. So there was iRadio in the West and iRadio in the East, and they were going to amalgamate them. So they basically got rid of the breakfast show on the east side of Ireland, and that was myself and Bernard O'Shea. Yeah. And then when that happened, I was kind of like, oh shit, I need to find another job. And I felt like I panicked a little bit, and I just took the next job, whatever it was. It was in radio, it was up in Dublin, it was with another radio station. And I feel like, in the space of a couple of weeks of the show finishing up, and I panicked and I just went for the next thing. I didn't give myself time or the opportunity to maybe see if there was something else out there. So when the breakfast show finished up in 2FM, I was like, okay, Keith, listen, this, you know what happened the last time? And I ended up it kind of like from there, from my radio into that next job, into 2FM, whatever. I never gave myself the opportunity to stop and think. And I probably was quite stressed, and, probably just, it was kind of like, when you're a dad as well, you've got young kids and you have to pay the mortgage, a lot of pressure on, and you've all that going on. So I just sort of like ended up just going from kind of one thing to the next. And it's not a bad thing to end up in the breakfast show at 2FM, but at that point I was like, okay, listen, I need to take stock. I need to figure out what I want to do with my life. I want to figure out whether I actually want to work in radio. I want to figure out whether I actually like working in RTE, figure out whether I actually like myself. And I decided at that point, well, it was something my wife said about therapy. And I said, you know what, actually, not really realizing what I'd get from therapy. But in that moment, I was going, you know what, this guy, if I go to see a therapist, he might be able to help me figure out what to do next. And he might be able to tell me, I was hoping I'd turn up to see some lad, and he'd go, well, this is what you do next. And I'd be like, great, nice, thanks very much, head off and just do what he told me to do. Yeah. That's not how it works, but it was one of the best decisions I ever made, because it set me off into that 2-year sort of the next 2 years, breakfast show finishing up, still doing a little bit of radio on the weekends on 2FM. I did a bit of work with RTE Gold at the time. I was doing stuff on television, but at that time, through therapy, I got into writing. I wrote some short stories, which became the play, which became, I made the decision to leave radio and leave RTE and go and do my own thing. And, and subsequently got this play written, started a new job. And I kind of feel like it was a very difficult, roller coastery couple of years. There was times where I thought I was going a bit mad. There was times where my family thought I was going a bit mad. There's, I've cut certain people out of my life, big upheaval, big changes, but ultimately at the end of the 2 years, I feel like I'm in a good place,
Yeah. And did you feel like when you finished the breakfast show that you were just mentally burnt out?
Probably looking back, that's what it was. But at the time, I just felt a huge amount of rejection because I felt like, I took it personally. So I was like, okay, they don't want me. These guys don't want me. RT don't want me. 2FM don't want me. They're done with me. I'm on the scrap heap. So I took that very personally. Yeah. And like part of what I did in therapy was to try and figure out, like, I could have just been very angry with everybody and sort of projected. But what I did was, I think, not knowing at the time, what I ended up doing was looking inward and trying to figure out why I took that so badly, why I took it as rejection, why I thought that meant because somebody else didn't like me that I was on the scrap heap. And I just, so it was the rejection really that hit me hard. And that was the thing I had to sort of deal with. I moved, I suppose through therapy, I managed to move on from being angry at everybody and feeling rejected and feeling sorry for myself and feeling sad for myself. And I managed to sort of turn that around eventually, into figuring out, what happened in my childhood, what happened when I was growing up.
Yeah.
And like burnout was definitely a part of it because, when you're working those hours, it's not good. I was stressed, but I was stressed, but like right up to the end of the breakfast show finishing up, I was running marathons. I was playing five-a-side. I was going to the gym. I still had 2 kids and a wife and a house to look after. And like I was go. Like I just, full on doing stuff, like
exactly the same. Yeah.
Bonkers. Like when I look back on it now, I'm like, what was I doing? And my wife would have said to me loads of times, like, you're doing too much. Like, would you not? And I'm like, oh, grand, absolutely fine. Just trying to feed. I don't know what it was.
I think when people feel physically fit, they nearly feel mentally fit when they're not really. I'm just listening to you. I'm exactly the same. Everything you're saying, I was exactly the same. And I burnt out completely and I ended up having a breakdown. And because it was just like, I was all go. And because I felt physically fit, I wasn't mentally fit really, And then, I mean, like I read a quote that you said something about like you were like, you'd go and put on be a different person for a few hours in the morning, like putting on a show nearly. So when you finished the breakfast show, did you go home then and just, you felt not depressed, but you were just kind of like, right, that's my show over for the morning. And you were a different person for the rest of the day. Is that how you felt?
Yeah, totally. Like you'd be the energy it takes to do, to put on a breakfast show or to be somebody for a few hours. I would just come home and like, it started off at the start, like of just having a quick nap just to get me, and then I was sleeping for 2 hours during the day, or, I'd sleep for maybe 2.5, 3 hours. And I was like a zombie going out. I remember Dermot Whelan explained it very well. Because he made the decision to not do the breakfast show anymore. I think he was on 98 FM, and he was describing it as like just you get up and it's just like you're running on adrenaline, like it's pure adrenaline for the first few hours of the day, and then you just run out of adrenaline. You flat line. You go, not only you flat line, you go down.
You crash, yeah.
You crash, and then that's it. And you're doing that every day. It's like adrenaline spike in the morning, crash, adrenaline spike, crash, adrenaline spike. And then you get to the weekend and you don't have fucking energy for anything. And what I used to do was just have a few beers, like drink, and that was kind of like my reward for getting through the week. But it was just this constant wheel of of just, adrenaline in the morning, nap, trying to have some sort of family life in the afternoon, evening, and then kind of drinking at the weekend, and then back, start it all again Monday morning. And just bollocks. How did your breakdown, you called it did you say you called it a breakdown? How did yours manifest itself?
Jesus
what did
Christ.
it look like?
Yeah, well, if you want to be out of here at a certain time, it'll be a while if I have to go through my stuff. So I changed careers pretty much in my 30s. I was working for my father, and it was in the construction at the time, and kind of 2008 or 9 kind of just went wallop, and I was doing it because it was a job I didn't want to do, and then I'd been to therapy when I was younger for depression, and I was riddled with anxiety, but I didn't know I had anxiety. And I basically, like you said, I had a house and had a wife, and my son was on the way and stuff like that. And it was just too much for me. And I got, the anxiety was crippling me because I had to retrain to go out and do something else. And I felt like no experience, no qualifications, but I felt I had to take a job to pay the bills, but it's not what I wanted to do. And I just crashed. I just like tears every morning, in tears at lunchtime, in tears going to bed. Just felt very overwhelmed. I mean, changing careers in your 30s is not easy. I mean, I know your play is about kind of, the pressures of a man kind of in their 40s, and like, I mean, I'm 41 last week and I'm still feeling it now. So that's what happened to me anyway. But like I'm still telling my story. I mean, like I've only learned the term body dysmorphia earlier on in the year, and I'm telling my story about that now. I've lived with that for 20 years. You know what I mean? And I lived with an eating disorder as well, that I never told anyone about until a few months ago. So I mean, I'm like, I'm riddled with stuff.
But the thing about it is, Keith, the truth about it is, and this is not to take away from what you've gone through, is that I think there's lots of people out there, as you said, riddled with stuff that we all have our things, and the only issue is, Keith, like, we don't talk about it, so we always feel like we're on our own. Like, every man who's struggling feels like he's struggling on his own. He feels like his friends wouldn't understand, nobody would understand, nobody would get him. Like, how could, like, I'd imagine for you, like, how could you explain to somebody that you've got an eating disorder? Sure, you're an Irish lad. Why would an Irish lad have an eating disorder? It's not like you're a model or something. And that's what we talk to ourselves. We keep it all in our own head, and we answer our own questions, and we never say it to anybody. And it's the best thing for it. And that's the reason that I talk a lot about it, is because talking will cure, will help. I mean,
but that's exactly why I do this. This is why I like, during the pandemic, I started a podcast, I started a website, sharing my story, blogging about my story, sharing my story now, because my story is still evolving. You know what I mean? It's like, because I always say to people, your story it never ends. It's how you, like, same like with your play, it's how you write it, it's how you, it's how you frame it. So totally. And like, I was going to ask you, because I know me doing this podcast and sharing my story is very therapeutic. I'm assuming when you wrote your play, it was kind of pretty therapeutic for you, was it?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, that's, to be honest with you, the play came from therapy, because I went to see, my therapist's name is Luke, and I was going to see him every week, once a week, every week for about a year. And he was asking me questions about, what I liked doing, what I didn't like doing, all this kind of stuff. Do you ever write? Are you a writer? And I said, well, I'm not a writer, but I do write. I used to like writing now, so he's very good. Like, is it probe you and, get you back into doing things. So he said, would you write something for me, or would you write down? Because I was talking to him about things that happened to me as a kid, and he was like, would you try write that down, write that story down, And he got me into writing sort of stories about things that happened to me, and journaling every morning. So I'd write 3 pages of nonsense every morning, just like, I have books somewhere, and I wouldn't even be able to read them back. They just aren't legible. So I ended up then, through that, going to a creative writing course. And at the end of the creative writing course, we kind of had to write a story every week. So at the end of it, I ended up with these stories, like, I don't know, 8 or 9 or 10 stories. Yeah. And it was about sort of, shit that just happened to me, stuff that happened to me in the past. It was just all this, my stories, that, the way we carry around these things in our heads, like, almost like ghosts and people from your past, and things that happened to you, and your traumas and all that kind of stuff. And I wrote them all out in story form. and kind of got rid of them in that way. But also, I had an idea for doing something on stage with them. I'm a big fan of Adam Buxton, and he was talking to a guest. I can't remember the name of the writer. I think if you're into Adam Buxton, he was on his last show. Anyway, so he was talking to this guy, and he was talking about doing the show where he would write a book, but he'd talk about the chapters. So he'd do a live show, basically reading out stories from the chapters and see what the audience reaction was like. So not quite stand-up, not quite a play, but just, a sort of an interactive thing. And he was kind of like thinking that would help him write the book. And I was like, that's a great idea. I'd love to write a book. So I'd love to go out and, perform the stories or read the stories. I wasn't sure. So I sent the stories off to a friend of mine, Janet Moran, who's a director and writer and actor. And we happened to go to college together, and I had studied drama in college. So I got in touch with her and I said, look, I've got these stories, Janet, would you have a look at them for me and give me your honest opinion? And I'd like to do something on stage with them. I'm not sure what, but I'd like to work with you if you're free and if you're interested, blah, 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 blah. Probably the hardest email I ever wrote. That's vulnerability, And she got back to me. She was very positive, and she said, this is great stuff. I think there's a one-man play in this. And I was like, oh, right. Okay, cool. Not really knowing how but yeah, we met, and then COVID hit, and we met in parks, and we met over Zoom, and we sort of we sort of fashioned it and wrote it together, changed the stories into a 1 hour one-man show about my life. So it's a play about my life. I gave myself the only part, and I put myself on the poster.
You cast yourself.
I know the perfect guy.
I was just going to say, if you had to cast someone else, who would it be? Who would you choose?
Geez. I don't know. That's a tough question.
Choose anybody.
I was asked the question today, who would play me in a movie, and I said another interview, and I said Colin Farrell, because I'd love to hear him doing the flat Midlands accent.
Colin Farrell.
I'd love Colin Farrell as a lad from the Midlands living in Milbridge, with two kids.
He might pull it off.
I'd love to see him play just a normal bloke, living in a house in a state, nothing fancy.
Yeah.
Doing a podcast, you know what I mean? Could you imagine that? Imagine that movie.
Jesus, yeah. No explosions, nothing.
No, just a guy doing podcasts in his front room, and and living in a housing estate. I'd love that. I'd love to see that movie.
Yeah. You did your own podcast for a while. Are you still doing your own podcast?
Yeah, still do it. I started it in lockdown, as I think most people did, and we're 120 episodes in, and I was doing a lot of, during lockdown I was doing 3 podcasts a week because I didn't have a huge amount else to do apart from writing the play, and I'm still working RTE, but I was probably in manic recovery at that stage. And so I have 120 podcasts now. It's myself and a friend of mine called Mike, who lives over in Clare, and during lockdown we do one podcast every week, just chatting about whatever's going on in our lives, or if we thought of stories from our past. And we worked together in London years ago in the 90s in a hotel. So that's how I knew him. Yeah. And we sort of made contact again the last couple of years, and we just started chatting. So now every week, me and Mike just have a chat, and we put it out as a podcast, and there's no interviews around. That's all it is. But it's great. It's great crack. And the podcast definitely got me, possibly both of us, through lockdown,
Yeah. So as you said earlier, it's just talking about stuff, and you know what, it doesn't even have to be talking about anything specific or anything important or anything that's really heavy. You could just sit in there, just waffle for a while, and it can really be helpful.
Yeah, sitting there chatting with no agenda. Like sometimes I feel like I find it difficult and feel awkward talking to people because I feel like there's an agenda here. I'm trying to figure out, like, one of the things I learned through therapy was, like, I'm a bit of a people pleaser. So I'm trying to figure out, what does this person want me to talk about and what do they want to hear, rather than, me just, having to chat. So I get it with certain people. I can, like with Mike, I can just chat. It doesn't have to be, there's no agenda. I'm not trying to impress him. I don't really know him that well. So it's kind of nice. It's good. And the podcast is called, funnily enough, writing my own play and putting myself in it. The podcast is called the Keith Walsh Podcast. So, I'm just trying to get my name out there, man,
So what inspired you to name the podcast that?
I just put a load of names in a hat.
Yeah,
the Keith Walsh Podcast.
Geez, that was convenient, wasn't it?
Lucky the way it worked out.
Yeah. Like, I wanted to ask you, do you get nervous before you go to perform the play?
Well, I'm swinging wildly between really nervous and really excited at the moment. I haven't performed a play. I've been in shows years ago. I haven't been at anything in a long time. And I haven't never performed a play on a stage in front of a live audience, really. Like I did in college. This is a whole different sort of thing. I'm better off not knowing what it's like.
Yeah.
But I am very nervous. I'm nervous about getting it's an hour of dialogue. It's just me. At the moment, I'm down to I have it worked out. I'm learning 7 or 8 pages every day. It's not even that much. Like that's I broke it up into thirds. I'm trying to get the lines into me. So that's what I'm at the moment.
Yeah.
And I'm nervous about that. I'm nervous about making a fucking show of myself, and I'm nervous about people not liking it or it being bad or me not doing it. Giving it.
Yeah.
Not doing it well. Loads of these things, but.
So that's you being a people pleaser, and that's you probably part of you said you left the breakfast show, the rejection and feeling, it's probably just not feeling good enough. The reason why I'm saying that is because I get like that with pretty much everything I do, so I can kind of relate to you a little bit there,
Yeah. And what are you? You're a designer, is it, Keith?
No, so I work for radio as well. So I'm not a DJ. I work for an advertising agency. We advertise kind of ads on the radio and stuff like that. So I do digital and I do design stuff as well, but just in general, like you being a people pleaser, and that's what kind of the whole self-doubt thing is what happened to me before, and I'm not as bad anymore, but it's just the self-doubt and are you good enough? And as you said, it's about being it's like an Irish bloke, just, and especially with men's mental health in general, which is what I've been trying to push really a lot at the moment. It's just the stigma, with men, and just I think usually with men they just go undiagnosed with stuff, and they don't talk about it, and they just don't get mentioned a lot either, really.
Yeah, they just I don't know. Like, I suppose like when we were growing up, we were just told to get on with it, man up, drive on, keep going, grow a pair of balls, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
That was the narrative for men, especially for Irish men, like get up and get on with it.
I don't ever remember hearing anything in the 80s or even the 90s about mental health. And that's not to say that wasn't. I just don't remember it. Maybe I was just caught up in my own misery, but I don't remember ever being like, I remember I went for therapy for depression and that, but I mean, as in say in school or ads or on telly or on radio, I never heard anything, being spoken about it.
It just wasn't a thing. And the funny thing is, like, the best thing for it is to be open and honest and transparent. And I talk a lot about being vulnerable, and Irish men, especially men in general, we're not very good at being vulnerable. So we don't like to admit that we made a mistake, or that we don't like to admit that we're not feeling it. We can't do the job. We don't actually, we're feeling under pressure. We're stressed. If we like to tell people that we're grand, everything's grand. So, how are you feeling? Grand. How's work? Grand. I remember people asking me, if you're presenting the breakfast show on 2FM, it's a big enough deal, in certain circles, and people would ask me how's the job, and probably expect me to be like, have loads of great stories and loads of, but I would just say it's grand, and then I always make a joke like, well, they haven't sacked me yet, or I'm still there, and there was nothing. I never felt positively really towards it. And like I did, like when I was there, I gave it all, and I gave it 100%. But it was just a weird sort of like I was clearly stressed and and not necessarily like the other thing is I wasn't. If you asked me a question like how's the job, I wasn't in touch with my emotions enough to actually be able to reach inside me and take out an emotion and go, you know what, I really love it. I really love it. I love that job. It's brilliant. I get it. Go in there. I just wouldn't. There was a disconnect between me and my emotions. So it was just like, and that's just survival mode. That's you learn to bury your feelings way down deep inside, so that
tell me about it.
So you can get by. And the only time if you need to have the crack, you'll have a drink, and other than that, you're sort of just. You feel like you're just pretending,
Did you ever feel my hands just disappeared? Did you ever feel or have any kind of anxiety or anything like that as a kid, or were you did it really all just come on kind of as you were an adult?
It's funny. It's only now that I look back on it, but I'd say I was very, very anxious. I don't know how to describe it, but I used to get like, I found it very hard to talk to people, especially adults, even as I got older, even as a teen, even when I started my first job, I'd find like people who come in and people like, you'd be working in a shop and the boss man would come in or something. And I would just like, I wouldn't be able to talk to him. I wouldn't even, and I used to get this terrible itch in the back of my head. And I used to like, I'd be nearly sweating. And, I just thought that's what everybody went through. Like, I had these anxious things. And actually I suppose when I started drinking in my, 17, 16, 17, I was probably a late starter, but that's when I found like, oh, this is great. I don't feel like I do normally. This is like, I really liked the feeling of having a few drinks. That was lovely. And thankfully I never quite became an alcoholic, but I did like it a lot, and I did use it a lot, and it was my medicine really for a long time. And I definitely self-medicated with it, and but I definitely had anxiety that I just didn't know was anxiety, because I just thought this is just how everybody feels. So it didn't, and it never. I mean, and I talk about it, and I need to be careful as well, because people get anxiety so bad that it cripples them. And it obviously wasn't. It was enough. I was okay to just keep going. I found it difficult. I definitely started finding it difficult to go into school and then into college. And even though it's funny, because even though I studied acting, so I used to have to get up on stage and perform, but I just found it took fucking a lot of energy for me to do. And I was constantly sort of probably stressed from a young age, but just thought it was normal,
And did you try anything else apart from therapy?
I've done a lot. Like my first sort of introduction to like alternative medicine, we'll call it. But I started doing acupuncture about 7 years ago. Maybe a friend of ours was practicing acupuncture, and I used to go to her, and she'd sort of like, and I found it great because. And she used to say to me, like, are you stressed, Keith? And the pins would be hopping out of my head. I'd be so stressed. She was like, are you stressed? No, I'm not stressed at all. I didn't think I was stressed. But acupuncture started. But then, so I've always been a fan of acupuncture, and then therapy, and then meditation is my big thing now at the moment. So I'll meditate twice a day. And I recently went to somebody who performs a sort of a hypnotherapy. And that was really great. So I'm open to anything, and I'm very interested in the mind and meditation and mindfulness and trying to be in the moment and trying to manage. Like today, I got a couple of, you get those emails, like 3 or 4 emails in a row, and it's like
I had them this morning.
And it's like work, and it seems like a lot of work, and you sort of like start spiraling. You're just like, Jesus, no, I can't.
And you start sweating.
And I had three of those in a row at one point today, and it was okay because I was able to just sort of, I knew what was happening, so I was able to just sort of put it to one side, take myself, have a little chat with myself, have a think about what's going on, and once I figured it out, whereas before it would have kicked off a spiral, and it would have been stressed, and it would have carried it off with me for the rest of the day. Whereas now with meditation, I know a bad day isn't going to turn into a bad week. I'll reset in the morning, I'll reset that evening. Brilliant. And then we go again, so it's a really handy tool.
That's brilliant. I'm terrible at mindfulness and meditation. I mean, it's not like I haven't tried it. I find myself, I just get distracted with it. I find, I just kind of, I find it hard to focus because my mind is constantly just on the go all the time. But I have different things I'll do instead of that, where I suppose it's a sort of mindfulness, but like that happened to me this morning, where I just got up, so I'm working from home, so I got up off the laptop and I just walked away, went downstairs to the kitchen, put the kettle on, and just gave myself 5 minutes to regroup. So it's kind of the same thing. I have these kind of exactly. Just kind
of just have to walk away from it and not sit there and let it fester. And
exactly,
what I mean.
And that's the one thing has helped me massively, is what you were just saying about not letting it fester. Now what I do is I kind of just say I'm having a bad day, maybe not be work, or might be just you're not feeling yourself. I'll just embrace it now. Where before I would try and fight it, And now I find if you fight it, it's worse because you're just wrecked then after it. Just kind of embrace it now and say, look, fuck it, it's just one day. Let's just relax. You're not dropping. I'm not going to drop dead. This second.
Yeah, the immediate thing. The thing I find is that you want to send that email back straight away, going, I can't do. How can you expect me to do all this? Blah blah blah.
Yeah, You nearly have it typed as well, and you're like, no, just don't.
Just leave it for 20 minutes. It won't seem as bad, At least I know that about myself now.
Exactly. And then what happens then if you leave it and then you realize, like everyone, or not everyone, most people with anxiety, they catastrophize everything. So you think that your world is crumbling around you, when that's what that's why I walk downstairs, because you come back up and go, Jesus, the house isn't falling down. I'm still alive. It's not what I mean. But I know. Fucking tell me about it. But sure, look, let's address the elephant in the room. You support United as well, don't you? We better go and get this out of the way.
Yeah, I've been a United supporter all my life. Ever since I can remember being very young, and I found out my uncle worked for Sharp, and I thought that meant he was the manager of Manchester United, because they were sponsored by Sharp at the time.
Yeah.
And I remember getting signed photographs of Kevin Moran and Frank Stapleton and a few of those lads. I just always been a United supporter, and obviously then the 90s were great for us with the treble, and then the Ronaldo treble, as I call it, or my son calls it. We've had a good time, and this is just it's a difficult. Look, we had. I also in the 80s, like a lot of my friends were Liverpool fans, and that was their time. And then we had the 90s and some of the noughties.
Yeah.
But look, what can I say?
It's just not good for our mental health, really, though, is it?
It's just weird. We have a weird team. I really don't know what's going on. Like, my son has a theory that, Bruno Fernandes missed that penalty on purpose to get Solskjaer sacked, and then Paul Pogba got sent off because he was pissed off not being picked, so he just got himself sent off just to make a point to the manager. So I don't know how.
If that was our only problems, we'd be all right, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love for it to work out for Ole, because he's a legend, and I'd love if they were able to bring somebody in to manage the team, and he could sort of move into a director's role and sort of look at transfers and stuff like that. I think he'd be quite good at that, but I think it needs a bit of a. I don't know how many times you can say it about we just need a bit of a clear out.
So we nobody left.
Yes, we've been saying that since Fergie left. But we all knew that once Fergie left, it was going to be very difficult. I just really wish they'd given Moyes. I really wish they just left Moyes at it for a few years, given him 5 years. I don't think he could have been. I mean, it definitely couldn't have been any worse.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he didn't kind of, he didn't help himself, but.
He admits the job in the wrong way.
Yeah, but he admits now that he realizes that. So if you had given him a bit of time, he might have been all right. I mean, the very first United jersey I ever bought was actually the Sharp one, but it was a white one
with the black stripes. No,
it was the white one with the red stripes, but they're on the side here, and it was the Sharp one, and I think there's a picture of me wearing, and I think it's 1990, but I think it was a 1989 kit.
Yeah,
it was the first. Anyway, it was my first ever kit, and I loved it. Absolutely loved it. Sharp
great jersey.
Yeah, Sharp made great kits, didn't they?
They did. Well, they sponsored great kits. They made great computers.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, actually, my sister had it was like a ghetto blaster, but it was a ghetto, but it was a Sharp one, and it was red.
Yeah.
The double tape decks. I think the one I had was a Sanyo one. I don't even know if you'd find Sanyo anymore.
Yeah, we had a great Sharp stereo at one point. Yeah, great.
Yeah. Well, the reason why I was asking about that was because I'm going to wrap this up now fairly soon. I started off this whole thing by writing a blog, because I used still sport as an escapism. And I remember I kind of read something from you today. You said something similar, didn't you? Where you just like you'd sit there and you just zone out for a while, wouldn't you? Or there'd be other people there, you're like, and your wife and that, and you just, even they'd be having a laugh, and you just weren't yourself. And
it was a way of I found it as a way of blocking out blocking people out because I'd say I have to watch this match, and then I have to watch the hurling match, and then I have to watch this, and then it just meant I didn't have to talk to people. I could just sit on the couch and zone out. And it's funny because then I just, I started therapy. I just stopped watching sport altogether, and now I watch it again, and I love it, and it's. I don't watch it in a way that I used to. Like, I don't watch it with like nobody can talk to me. I watch it and it's inclusive, and I watch it with my son, and we'll go to the Ireland match, or it's just a much more sort of inclusive way. It's not just me on my own trying to block out the world. It's even like I try and include the missus and get her to watch a match with me, and explain what's going on. But like I try to be more inclusive about it, and I ultimately realize I do like it. But it just can't be like, I can't misuse it
you have
kind of like drink, you have to be careful the way you use it,
Yeah, that's what I always say. I've much more of a healthy relationship with stuff now. But what I found with that was just once I developed a healthy relationship with myself, I could have a healthy relationship with stuff like that. Like for me, it was sport and food or whatever it is, it's everything really.
Anything that'll give you that dopamine hit, that good sweet dopamine hit.
Anything that you don't have to deal with your crap in your head or whatever is around you,
totally.
But I suppose like once you learn to be able to deal with them things, you can embrace the other stuff a bit better.
Totally. Like, one of the maddest things that happened to me was I just stopped drinking. I didn't even it wasn't even that I tried. It was just once, as you said, once I learned to deal with myself, I just didn't need it. I didn't need to self-medicate anymore. And that was the most surprising thing. I just haven't drank in nearly 2 years now.
Really? Yeah. That's amazing.
Mad.
Brilliant.
Mad.
Right, maybe we'll wrap this up. I think we've probably waffled on enough. Before you go, Keith, we suppose we'll plug your play. Where can people get all the stuff for the play, the tickets and all that type of stuff?
Yeah, so it was produced by the Riverbank Arts Centre in Newbridge. So they basically found the money, got the funding from the Arts Council to put the tour on, and I can't thank them enough. So you get all the information on theriverbank.ie about the tour, and there's a page you can go to, and each venue that I'm playing in, there's a link to each one, and you can click on that to buy the tickets. So we're going to Ennis, we're going to Cork, we're going to Killarney, we're going to Thurles, we're going to Athlone, we're going to Kilkenny, we're going to wherever. So all the links are there if you go to theriverbank.ie and buy some tickets. And it's the story of a 40-something-year-old man dealing with his midlife crisis. So, and it's funny because it's a play, and your ultimate midlife crisis, write a play for yourself,
Yeah, and Colin Farrell is in it as well. So
Colin Farrell plays me.
Oh, very good. Have you anything else that you want to mention before we go, Keith?
No, I think that's everything, Keith. Thanks very much for your time. And anybody who's listening, come see the play, and and you can I'll hang around afterwards. We can have a chat.
Cool. And we'll be back next week with the Two Keiths podcast. Right, guys, we'll wrap that up. That was episode 1 of series 4. Woohoo, we got through it and we're still alive. I'll be back next week with another episode of the Endless Bar podcast. See you later, guys. Bye.